All right, this video is talking about perceptual organization, which is in module 21. So perceptual organization is, now that we've talked about all five senses, we've talked about vision and hearing and smell and taste and touch. We've talked about all five senses, and now once it all comes into our brain, and we've talked about that, the brain takes in all this information for all five senses, how do we organize that information into something that actually gives us some sort of perception of a stimuli? So first thing that you need to know is about Gestalt. And Gestalt psychology is kind of looking at an organized whole. Gestalt psychologists look at look at a particular stimuli, and they say that we pretty much try and fill in the pieces, and we're trying to make some sort of organized sense out of what we see. This, for example, would be just like this picture right here. Okay, for example, you can tell that you can see that there are kind of these circles here with little section cut out of it. There's 3 circles with section cut out of it, and then there's 3 kind of carrots almost. They're little V's here, right? But if you look at it individually, okay, the individual pieces don't make a whole lot of sense. But the organized whole, the Gestalt, looks at it from the standpoint of this is a universal picture. So you can tell, when we look at it as a whole, you can tell that it looks like it's a triangle, okay, a white triangle that has no borders, over top of a triangle that has black borders. And we're trying to make some sort of organized sense out of this. So Gestalt is trying to make an organized sense out of something. So rather than seeing, for example, if you're looking at a chair, okay, Gestalt says we see the entire chair rather than the individual pieces of the circles and the lines and the curves of the individual chair. We put it together to in our brains to be able to see the actual chair. Okay, now, along with this, we also look at form perception, and so we also perceive how particular forms differently. So the first thing is that we distinguish between the figure and the ground. And I'm going to minimize this, and I actually have a couple of things that I want to show you with this. First thing is that this picture right here with, it looks like these animals right here. Okay, so we are actually going, and it's kind of going along with Gestalt, where we are actually looking at, so we see that even though there's a bunch of black blotches and it's interrupted by all of these white sections, for us, we can actually see it as a dog, 2 dogs, and a cat, okay? Because part of it has to do with Gestalt and putting together the piece of the whole, but the other part of it is making part of it the figure, which is the black part, okay, and the ground is going to be the kind of the background, which is the white part. And so we will oftentimes our minds will determine what's the figure, so what is the stimulus that we're actually looking at, and what's the ground, what's the background of the object. So that's a prime example of figure and ground. Other things that we are looking at is that we group stimuli by proximity, similarity, continuity, connectedness, and closure. That's 5 things that there's a lot of little pieces in there, so I'll let you write that down and I'll explain. So what we're seeing here is that, for example, I have this picture over here, and proximity is our tendency, and this is pretty much what you have, very similar to what you have in your book as a picture. But our proximity is that we have these parallel lines here, and because we want to, our brain wants to put anything that's close spatially together, we see these as three sets of two. So you see, it's almost kind of like a road here. You have two paralines here, two paralines here, two paralines here. Okay, so we group it that way. Similarity, we like to group things according to like objects, like similarity. So you will see, for example, a row of triangles, a row of circles, a row of triangles, rather than, or you can, rather than triangle, circles, triangle, triangle, circles, triangle. So we will look at it in rows based off from the object similarity to each other. This one is continuity. We like to look at things and we like to be able to see things continue rather than being broken up. So rather than looking at this and seeing half circles, we look at it as a wave shape interrupted by a horizontal line. Okay? Closure, we like to go and be able to put things together rather than seeing these as individual dotted lines. We see it as one complete shape of a triangle. And then connectedness, we look at, for example, this is an example of connectedness where we look at, for example, these are a series of lines, a series of dots, rather than each individual dots because they're connected together. Other example that I have for you that I was going to give you as a handout. If you look at this one, figure 2, so this kind of flowery shot here, okay? It has various small elements that can be organized in a variety of ways. So it continually changes as you shift from organization from one to another. And so in a sense, this is kind of a figure and a ground. So as you try and make sense of it and as you kind of look at it, you can kind of see that you are constantly changing if you're looking at it as, for example, flower shapes, and then so some elements of it will become the figure, so the actual stimuli, and some of it will become the ground and become the background. Other examples, this is another figure and ground example. So if you look at this word here or this one right here, okay, you'll see that if you kind of try and look at one way or the other, you're going to switch from figure to ground. So if it's kind of very ambiguous because the shape of the F and the shape of the G in A, okay, are very similar, and between the I and the G, so you can say this is figure. Okay, so you can see the figure, and if you look at it, you can also see ground in there. Another example you can see down here, it says two words at the same time. Can you see both of them? Again, figure and ground. Down here, this one are examples of kind of ambiguous figures. And again, these are looking at reorganizations. And so 4A is called the Wilson figure, and it is both an Eskimo. The dark area is an igloo, and the Eskimo is facing toward it. So this is the igloo. Okay, the Eskimo is facing toward it. All right. And Indian head. The dark area is the Indian's headdress. So Indian's headdress, here's the face. There's the nose, here's the eye, and the mouth, okay? So that's kind of an ambiguous one. The second figure is the bird can be seen either as a goose or a hawk, depending on the direction it's flying. So is it a goose flying this way, or is it a hawk flying this way? Okay, again, very ambiguous. And again, it kind of illustrates figure and ground. And then this one, I always look at this one. What do you see first? Do you see a face, a man's face with, these are the eyes and the nose and the mouth, and here's the neck, and here's the shoulders? Or do you see a word? Do you see the word? It's sideways. So this word liar this way. This is L, it's in cursive, I, A, R, okay? Again, other examples of figure and ground, ambiguous. And then lastly, these are some more examples of how we group things, okay? So this one, again, how we group things. So the 12 circles in 5A are organized into two groups, illustrating the principle of proximity. So notice we have two groups here. We have one group here and we have one group here. We like to group them rather than just look at them as just a whole bunch of circles randomly. Okay. In 5B, a triangle of black dots appears against a background of X's, and so this one again is looking at us trying to group things according to proximity. C is looking at the two halves of the circular field appear quite separate, both illustrating the principle of similarity. So you can see that the two halves look like they're kind of separate, so we kind of divide the circle in half. D is typically seen as a spiral of dots, so you'll see this as a spiral of dots with one dot outside, illustrating the principle of continuity. So we kind of look at this is a continuous spiral, and this is just kind of an odd dot outside. E, okay, this one is seen as a diamond between two vertical lines, okay, rather than just a bunch of random lines. F is seen as a triangle, okay, so F is seen as a triangle, even though there's spaces in between here. Okay, both E and F illustrate the principle of closure. Were it not for closure, E would be seen as the letter W stacked on letter M. So think about this. W stacked on the letter M. You see that? So it could happen, okay? Or as a K, okay, faced with a mirror image K, and 5F could be seen as three separate acute angles. All right. Figures G and H show how Gestalt principles can be so powerful they produce visual illusions. Distances between parts of a pattern that are organized into the same group, proximity principle, are underestimated relative to the same distances when the parts belong to different groups. So notice that for G, okay, you have these. You can see that these two lines are together, these two lines are together, these two lines are together. And so again, we're taking a look at kind of this idea that they're going together even though they're not really. All right, that's the idea of form perception. The